not being recorded, right?
So the first, I'm going to move it to answered. So is there anything or something you see in partners when they have made the decision to go? Any benchmarks? That's a great question, because that we do see a shift with people that that choose that. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Rob?
Well, I have a pretty simple answer for that, which is always my answer in some way for that, which is the opposite. What is the opposite of love? And the opposite of love is not hate. Hate means you're still passionate, you're involved, you're maybe at the angry end, but you're still connected. To me, the opposite of love is indifference. And so when you get to a point, I truly believe this, where it's like, well, I'd like to be with them, but it's not a big deal. And if we break up, and you're detached, I mean, literally, relationship building is about attaching. And as you are detaching, you get less and less, you're thinking about them less. You're thinking more about you and what you're focused on. And so they're beginning to kind of lose the imprint on you. And you think more maybe fondly of them, but you don't have the intensity of feelings. You're becoming more indifferent. And I think that's how inside of me, I would know if I was moving away from someone. I don't know, Tammy, what do you think?
No, I think that's a perfect example. And I have seen this. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that like they've made the decision in their head and it has to get to their heart. And like you just kind of hear the shift, and it may be the indifference, but they just know. And I think it's like you have to trust your gut that you'll know when you'll know when you know. And there's no timeline. It's not like, well, at this, benchmark time wise, I should know, or I should decide, or, at, X amount of months in, I'm going to make the decision by that time. I think it's just such a process. Yes. To get it, because then when you've made the decision and it aligns in your heart and your head, and then it isn't did I make a mistake? It's like you just can trust the decision. So and there's a number of people that's the right choice for them, and I think that can be a very healthy choice for a lot of people.
I actually think that not enough people that we work with do make the decision to be separate. I think that there are folks who hang out for more abuse than they should be putting up with. And we have addicts who, honestly, their spouses are so angry all the time that they're not able to see a way to move forward. So, it can happen on either side. I will tell you guys one thing, because I just talked to a couple of this issue on one of the consultations I do, Tammy. I don't know if I think I told you about this. So one of the things about being a therapist that we know, or they teach us, is that it's not unusual for a couple to come to us for couples therapy, but the reality is that one of them or the other is already out, and they don't know how to say that. So they go to therapy to use, me or someone other therapist to help guide them into saying it. So for example, I was just working a couple the other day, and I said to him, on a 0 to 100%, how into this relationship are you? And he said, 80%. And she said 10. Like, okay, so you needed me to help you by making it concrete. Say to him that you don't want to be here. So sometimes you need a professional to help make it a safe place to do that. But I love what Tammy said about remorse and regrets. I say this to a lot of the men that are having affairs. Well, maybe I should be with this person. Well, you can leave your relationship, but do you want to leave it always wondering if it could have been better, but you missed out because you were having an affair? So do whatever you want to do, but make sure that you don't want to look back 3 years from now and say, and by the way, speaking of that, I go on and on. I don't know if you know this, Tammy, but the first time when I first wrote out of the doghouse, and I was running around New York City to interviews and selling the book and doing that kind of thing. And I sat with two guys who were doing radio interviews, I swear to God, and they were both, I would say, 50 to 65. And they had both read the book because they were going to interview me, and both men, and this is very unusual, got tearful before the interview. And they said to me, looking at this and seeing how I could have done it differently, I realize now that maybe I could have saved my first relationship, but I didn't know how. And so I would say make every effort to learn how and do the best so you don't have any regrets later. Because here are these men saying, oh, that was actually the love of my life. I've enjoyed my new marriage, but it wasn't. I wish I had what I'd left behind. So I agree with you, Tim.
Well, and I think that's really key, but I also think if you don't do the cleanup work, you take that garbage into the next relationship on either side. So I think it's really one of those, if you choose to leave, with integrity, and, not taking those bad, like those two guys that you were talking about, those patterns didn't get changed, and they, we often hear this of people that have chronic affairs. They go to the next relationship and have affairs. I hear, unfortunately, also that, like, I was the former affair partner and now he's cheating on me. So those patterns get repeated, and we have an opportunity to do things differently. So that was a really long
A good
and
question.
roundabout, but I think you'll know, do it with integrity. And if you're feeling indifferent like me, then, and can really vision your life differently, without the other person. I think that's a key to it too.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I could go on forever because it's an important topic. There's nothing wrong with taking a trial separation. Some people take it in their own house where they're living in separate places. Some people get a trial divorce and separate their money, and they just sit in that for a while. So that piece is out of the way, and then they see how it goes forward. So formally separating doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end something. There may be a stage of working on yourself. So sometimes you think, oh my God, I can't stand another minute with that person. They're making me so angry. Maybe you need to live apart for a while, but it doesn't necessarily mean it isn't going to work out. So
But again, with that, if you do a therapeutic or trial separation, have a plan of what it is you're looking for to make a decision one way or the other. Because we unfortunately often hear people that are 2 and 3 years of being separated, and they're not working on either repairing the relationship or moving away. So they're kind of stuck in that in between, and nothing's really changing or shifting other than time is passing.
and I want to add something more. Be careful who you talk to, because some people say, oh yeah, you need to divorce their butt and get out of there. And well, they're not divorcing. They're not struggling with their spouse. Their kids are going to school every day unscathed. So it's easy for people on the outside to say, well, how could someone do that to you? You should leave them. I don't think that's particularly good advice. I think the reason that you have people like us is we're neutral. I mean, I feel bad if you don't stay together. I feel hopeful if you do, but I don't have any skin in that game. I'm just here to support you and help you sort it out. So, going to your mom or going to your best friend or going to your husband's sister-in-law, I mean, you may be close to those people, but in that closeness, they may guide you in ways that aren't neutral enough for you. And by the way, Tammy, we know this from 12-step program. I can always find out somebody who will say what I want them to say. So if I go to a meeting and I don't ever want to do disclosure, I'm going to find 5 guys who say, no, that's a terrible thing to do, because that's what I'm looking for. So be careful who you talk to and make sure that they are neutral, because you may be pulling people in unconsciously that you kind of want them on your side or something. So we've done that
I
one.
know, but I was like, and I can tell you of people that I've consulted with, these people in my group, and they said I shouldn't, do whatever it is. And I just go, that's unfortunate that they're guiding you, because clearly they have so much knowledge about, these things, and they're doing life so well. So I love the 12 step, please, and at the end of the day, like Dr. Rav is right. We are in healthy relationships. So, I go to sleep at night. I'm not worried about, these things. I feel bad for people. And some of you, I mean, honestly, I can tear up when I'm, talking to people, because it impacts me and moves me. But at the end of the day, I have my recovery. I have healthy relationships. I have tools to use to do my life. So, your pain is your pain. And as much as we want to be supportive and help, everybody gets to pick.
And this happens in treatment, where someone will say, well, I don't like you and I don't like what you're saying, and I'm not going to do, we have a treatment center. Sometimes I think the guys are there right now. Some of you are, can be a little argumentative with us and the bottom line is, I get paid, I eat dinner, I have a happy relationship. You can do what you want. I mean, I'm here to support you, but I'm not going to argue with you or tell you how to live your life or tell you you're not listening to me. That's for your spouse. My job is to simply present information and options, whether you like them or not. Don't shoot the messenger is what I want to say. And by the way, Tammy, our treatment center is nearly full. And to me, that speaks to that we are becoming not only known, but there's a sense of trust from the therapists out there, because they don't refer if they don't trust people. So I'm feeling good. 3 years in, we're doing okay.
Yes.
Anyway, next.
And yes. Yeah. And we continue to move on. So, okay. I am a male addict in recovery for just under a year. Through my recovery journey, I have learned so much about empathy, and I'm starting to actually feel some empathy. However, I struggle with compassion. Could you please explain compassion, how it compares and contrasts to empathy, and any advice expressing compassion and actually being compassionate?
Okay. Tammy, do you want to? I think I'm pretty sure. I'm going to look in the dictionary, but I think I know. Why don't you go ahead? Do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, I was thinking empathy to me is more of the feeling, it's like I feel in alignment with you. And we talk about if something bad happens, I can feel empathy for you. Being compassionate to me. Um, so 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 here's one where I have to really practice compassion. I like there's a lot of people that are very angry out in the world right now, and I try really hard to be kind and remember I don't know where they're coming from, and to not judge people for whatever is going on and how they act. That I try to remember that I don't know their backstory, and I try to have compassion for them in the place that they're at, and that helps me. I don't know, I can't have empathy because I don't know what their story is, but I can have
Okay, so
compassion, which is action
I
to me.
looked it up.
Oh,
I
you
looked it
did?
up,
Okay.
and you're right, but they're related.
Yes.
So empathy is, I know this from our work, empathy is, how do I say this? If Tammy had a car accident, I'm so sorry. I would probably feel badly. Like, I know what that feels like. I haven't been in that situation, but I know what it's worried, what it takes to get your car fixed, and you have to call insurance, and thank goodness I'm okay. And I have empathy for, now I may not have ever been in a car accident, but that would be sympathy if I actually
Mhm,
been through
mhm.
it. But if I've never been through this, I can feel badly for what she's going through, even though I myself have not been through it. Sympathy, by the way, is when I have been through it and I completely relate to what she's felt because we're feeling the same experience. Compassion is acting on empathy. So compassion is, God, I feel badly about you, so let me send you a note. So let me send you some flowers. So let me stop by your house. And compassion is the action we take when we're feeling empathy or sympathy. I feel badly for you, so I'm going to do something compassionate. So Tammy said it correctly in the beginning, which is empathy is a feeling and compassion is more like an action. And they are related, because you feel bad for someone and you do something, then you're being compassionate. And compassionate people are often giving and looking out for others and trying to be helpful because they have empathy, they have sympathy, and they're acting on those feelings. Let's move on.
Yeah.
We got that.
Okay. Let me move the next one. All right. So the next question is, in my husband's latest relapse, he started a full-blown affair for the last year and a half. He has stopped sexting with people online for a few months and actually recently stopped porn and masturbation. However, he still has not ended all contact with the other person. That person would not let him go after finding out he is married, and he thinks he owes her because he lied to her. Is it correct to say that he is not yet sober from sex addiction? Yes, since
Yes.
he's still in contact with the person from his acting out, regardless of his reasons and justifications. Yes, the short answer is absolutely. He's not even abstinent. He is still hanging on to all of the stuff. So
In
I'm
fact,
really sorry.
I want to reinterpret your language. The affair partner would not let him go after finding out that he was married. So he's decided to use that as a reason that he can stay with her as long as he wants. That's very different than him thinking, believe me, he doesn't think he owes her anything. He wants to be with her. And I'm not saying he doesn't want to be with you, but he's creating excuses that sound reasonable. But do you really care whether he hurts this person or not? How about how much he hurt you? I'm more interested in, rather than this person that came and went over what period of time, what about the commitments to you? What about the responsibility to you? So no, he's not sober on a variety of levels. He has no empathy. He doesn't understand how you would feel. And therefore, he actually thinks that you might feel bad for her. Like, that's pretty crazy. He's not exactly on the same planet as the rest of us. And then on top of it, not only is he hurt, and by the way, he's hurting her too, just to say it, because he's still leading her on. Did you know that 90% of men who have affairs never leave their wives? So, but do you know how many women who have affairs say, here, I love you. I'm gonna leave my wife. We don't. We just want to use whoever we can use and go back to what is comfortable. Not all of us, but those of us who act out. So it is correct to say he's not sober, not just from sex addiction, but from lying and cheating and manipulating, which is all a part of addiction, but it's the part that you see most clearly. It is, since he's still in contact with the person, forget the reasons, forget the justifications, trust your heart. How does it feel for you that he's still continuing to make this relationship in any way a priority? In any way. So I were working with him and he was working on recovery, block her number, block her email address, block her on social media, don't let this person connect with you again because you don't want to keep hurting your family. And there is no other action. And if he's still having this longing and missing, then he's not really working on the problem. So that's my response. And it is sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so a couple things, in his latest relapse, I was like, has he ever had a period where he was actually in recovery? I suspect not. So, I mean, this is just from what I'm reading. And she wouldn't let him go. I'm like, he didn't try real hard. He was like, oh,
Right.
she won't let me go, because I'd be
Right.
like a whole new phone, like all new technology. And honestly, if you need to get an injunction, a court order against her, if she's like stalking him, I mean, he could take that action. He's
Mm-mm.
not willing to. He's going like, oh, I feel bad for her because I lied to her. Again, he
Well,
massively lied to himself and to you. That's,
and may I say thank you, Tammy? You just jogged my memory. I mean, my thoughts. He's telling you that he feels bad about lying to her, does he? Isn't that just another way of trying to get you to have sympathy for his situation so he can keep doing it? I don't think, for all you know, this person may have said, oh, you're married, I don't want anything to do with you, and he's begging to stay, but he won't tell you that. So this is a guy who might do well at seeking integrity. This
I
is
was going
somebody
to
who
say,
needs to be
this
in
is a
treatment.
treatment. Yeah, this
Right.
this is a client that would, please call me. We have a treatment
But
program.
to that point, Tammy, I don't see that he's in therapy. I don't see that he's seeing a professional. I don't see that he's in meetings or getting support. So his last relapse, by the way, you said last relapse. Again, another reason why someone should be in treatment. They're repeatedly relapsing. They're still lying to you. They just shifted. By the way, how do you know he stopped sexing people online? How do you really know that? How do you know that the porn and masturbation has stopped? Do you have any external support or truth? Anyone who's telling me I'm still having feelings for the affair partner, all bets are off. Whatever else they say, I don't believe them. And I think maybe you believe this person a little too much.
Yes. Get support for you. I'm so glad you're here. Set healthy boundaries for you. What do you need for your safety? Because he's unfortunately not safe for you. So
Not safe.
yeah.
Oh, wait, I want to say more thing. I'm so sorry, Tammy. What if she has STDs? What about, I worked with a guy recently who said, I know this person didn't have an STD because I've known them a while. What does that have to do with anything and what they're doing on their nights off? And you can't know that. And so my question is, if he's having sex with this other person, you don't know what that other person is doing, and you don't know whether your spouse is using protection. So I hope that you're not having sex. And if you are, then this person needs to wear a condom. And then what about COVID? Am I going off and hanging out in someone's house and my affair partner not knowing who they've been or what they've been exposed to? And then I'm going home to you? So, in this world of problems and disease out there, we have to be extra careful about our decisions and choices. And sex addicts are often careless in their decisions. And then we give you STDs.
So speaking of that, if you have not had an STD test, even if you think, oh, it couldn't happen to me, please go get an STD test. It's one of those just for your own health, for your own safety, get an STD
Everyone who
test.
comes into the treatment center gets tested for drugs and for sexually transmitted diseases. But also, I would say to you, I can understand being embarrassed. There are lots of free testing sites. You can go see a different doctor or go to an urgent care. You don't have to go to your family physician who you've known for 10 years if you have one. It is embarrassing for sure, but you can find yourself the resources to get the information without feeling so humiliated.
And it's not you. I mean, I know that there's shame and humiliation, but I wish all partners would just not have to experience that and just go, I'm doing this. I'm taking the empowerment for my body, and I'm going to go get information. So,
But I will say to your point, Tammy, that if you go and get tested, it's like you have to go to another layer of believing that it's true.
mm,
It's hard. It's easier to stay in denial if you think, oh, they would never do that, and that couldn't, and I don't need a test. But actually having to go and take the test, no matter the result, you cannot avoid your feelings or the reality of what you're doing. And I think some people don't get tested because of how they might leave them feeling, regardless of how the test works out. So anyway, let's keep
that's a
going.
fair point. Okay.
Thank
My
you.
female sex addict male partner, whom I discovered just under a year ago says he knows he is in love with me. How do I know, or how do I know he's trying to show he is in love with me? He does have a full recovery schedule, including meetings, therapists, a CSAT, a couples podcast with me, and the like. He says he's been sober since January. So a year.
So
Okay,
can you help explain the female sex addict male partner? I didn't quite understand the first sentence.
My female sex addict male partner. Okay,
Right.
so I think this is. I guess he does have a full recovery schedule. So
I'm going to assume that this is a woman.
She's a female partner of a male sex addict. Yes. Okay. Now I'm catching on.
I'm not sure about the question, and I'm not saying this to you, Tammy. I'm saying, how do you know if someone's in love with you? I mean, that's a rather big question. And how do you know if they know how to love you, or what love is? Or to me, love is about intimacy. Intimacy is about honesty and integrity and revealing yourself. So if I'm keeping secrets, if I'm living a double life, then I don't even know how I feel about you, because I'm so involved in all of that and feeling guilty and responsible with you and all that. I guess, this is Tammy, as a woman, would you be willing to dive into this one, and may I follow you? Because, I don't know if I have the right answer for this.
Well, and I guess, I mean, you've been together a year. It's been an interesting year for the whole world. I guess, like you're here and you're seeing him do things. I'm assuming you're feeling connection. You're seeing growth of the relationship. And, here's the reality for me. Love is action. Love is, the person showing up and taking care of things. And, it isn't just the starry, like Dr. Rob was talking about, the Christmas tree lights and, all the, the glitz and things. It's being there when, someone's, when someone's struggling, when someone's feeling down, like I know for sure my husband will do his darndest to be there for me and support me, even when I'm, kind of a hot mess, no, seriously,
Not you, Tammy.
No. Like, I think that the people that are in your life that really care. So Dr. Stantak, and I bring this one up often, talked about we do, are you, the two of you as a couple, able to focus on what's good for your relationship? Do you both step into that space? Does this feel like, without overhead thinking, but not underhead thinking, like, do you see the relationship moving forward in a positive? Do you see this person as somebody that, 5 years from now that you still want to have in your life? I mean, my husband used to go to work. Now he works right here. Like, his chair is right here. We bump chairs. But like, when he used to come home from work, the dog and I would both be at the door. Now, we've been married decades. We would both be at the door, like, so happy to see him. I mean, that's just like, I still genuinely care about him.
Do you wag your tail?
Bosley wags more. So
okay.
Bosley wags more, but there's still that feeling, but I don't base it just on the feeling. It's about, I care about this person. If he was gone from my life, would I continue life? Yes. Would I miss him deeply? Absolutely. But it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be the end of my world, but man, it would be such a gap. So I think part of it is like looking at, how do you really feel about this without over analyzing or under analyzing, which is kind of a challenge to get it, in the, proper perspective. So I don't know if any of that was helpful. Sorry.
I have a couple of more things though. And we're just throwing spaghetti at the wall because it's a very broad question.
Yeah.
But I think the question, if I were asking it, I would ask a different question, which is, how can I know that I trust? Do I trust him? Is he trustworthy? That's, to me, more interesting than love, because there is no love unless there's integrity and trust. So and the other thing I want to say, so there's that. And so the question, and I typed into the thing while Tammy was talking, love is behavior. Is when you're an addict, is nothing you say, I love you, it's great, I'm going to meetings, blah, blah, blah. How do you feel loved? And then there's one more thing, and this is true for us addicts, is we don't always know how to love you. We don't always know how to show you. it would be useful, I know it seems silly, to sit down and write a list of, I would feel loved if I was receiving this, if I was hearing that. And by the way, what makes me feel loved might be very different than what makes someone else feel loved. What I know would not make me feel loved is lying, manipulation, finding out secrets. That's not loving me. That's being more focused on what you want. There is one more thing here. A year is not very long. And I'm glad he has a schedule and I'm glad he's doing great, but people struggle, and this isn't just I went to a meeting, I went to therapy, and I'm going regularly, and now I'll never do it again. We struggle. And so I'm a little concerned that you're kind of hearing this message that I think spouses want to hear, but isn't always true, which is, I got in it and I'm doing the work and I'm doing perfectly. I haven't had a single distraction. I haven't wanted to do it once. Sorry, that ain't true. So part of how I would know is if this person were telling me about some of their struggles. They don't have to say it in detail. They can just say, I was really distracted today and I had to go to a meeting, talk to my sponsor. I'm doing a lot better, and then they have to tell you if they broke a bottom line rule. But nonetheless, I would be hearing things. Today was a struggle. I went to a meeting, had a lot to share. I'm feeling badly about what I would hear something, not just everything's fine. And I've been sober for a year. What is that? A year, and nothing bad has happened. Go ahead. So anyway, that's trust, reality.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been in recovery, quite a while. I absolutely could not guarantee to anyone that I will never, ever, ever relapse. I can't. I'm an addict. So if you're looking for the, everything's going to be perfect from here on, because we're still addicts, and I do what I need to do on a daily basis. Like Dr. Rob was saying, I do what I need to do to take care of myself so that, I can stay in recovery today.
And that's a really helpful thing, Tammy, because I often feel like I worry when I have a client who's at Seeking Integrity, or when I used to do private practice. I would say to them, so, after a while, like, do you feel like you could have a slip? Or especially in residential treatment, they're leaving. Oh, no, I got it. I'm not going to have a slip. I got this together. And I think I'm worried about you. I am much happier with the person who's leaving saying, I feel unsure, I'm worried, I have a lot of work to do, I can't be perfect, I don't know if I can do it or not. That person I feel much safer with. The person who comes along and says, oh, piece of cake, I got what I need to get, I'm good. I worry about those people, because either they're lying to themselves or they're lying to everyone around them.
One of the people in one of the meetings I go to uses recovered. I'm a recovered, and I cringe. I mean, I still, after all this time, cringe, because I was like, I never pretend like I got it in my back pocket and we're all good. So, okay.
And actually, let me tell them why.
Okay.
Because, there's this idea that once an addict, always an addict, and you can do all this work and not use or not drink or whatever, but you're still an addict. We have a brain problem. We have issues very much in our primitive part of our brain. We had learning experiences and growth experiences that were less than ideal. And we learned to use fantasy and compulsive behavior, whatever it was, to feel better. And that was learned at such an early age that in adult life, when strong stressors or triggers come up, we want to return to that distraction and those fantasies. But in recovery, we learn, oh, that's a distraction. That's a fantasy. I'm feeling bad. This is what I'm supposed to do. Before I got sober, I used to think, well, I want to go have sex, so I'll go have sex. Now I think, and it hasn't gone away. 35 years into recovery, and it hasn't gone away. Just isn't. And I'm pretty good at this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But now when I think, oh, I want to go have sex with a stranger, my first thought is, I wonder what's going on with me. I wonder what I need. I wonder how it is that I'm having these feelings, and what can I do to make sure that doesn't happen? Because I'm going to have this feeling, this desire, but at this point, it's just information. If Tammy wanted to use, I think her thought would be, wow, I'm really having a bad day. I better go get support. And it's having the same feelings, but reinterpreting them in a different way of living, I guess, is the way I think about it.
Well said. Okay. I am making connections from my childhood to my cross-dressing throughout my life. Is cross-dressing considered a sexual addiction? I dress to escape that feeling worse about after. Oh wait, I dress to escape, then feel worse after dressing. It's a cycle I want to stop.
Well, this isn't unusual that people come to treatment and say, I like to cross dress, or I like shoes, or I like leather, or I like being tied down, or they say I like being with men. In other words, and they're a man. In other words, they have a particular sexual arousal process that is true for them, but they don't like it. For example, I'll give you an example from a different level of experience, but the same thing. I work with a guy. I'm making this up. So I work with a guy who's married to the pastor's daughter, and he's very, very religious, and he has two children. He's very much a part of the church, but he comes in because he's having sex with men every third day. And he comes in to see me and he says, I know what my sex addiction is. It's that attraction to men. And if I could just get rid of that attraction to men, which I know is my addiction, then I could focus on my family and being the person I want to be. Well, guess what? There are things you can change and there are things you can't. One of the things you cannot change is sexual orientation or the template of what arouses you. If someone's into cross-dressing, they probably started fairly early in one way or another. This has probably been a part of their life in one form or another for a very long time, and it's not going away. So a fetish is when you attach an object to your sexuality. So you may like having sex, regular vanilla sex, but boy, when you add those panties, boy, when you add that leather, boy, when you add those shoes and those feet, it's really exciting. So it's a part of what turns us on. There are many things that turn people on that they don't like. I don't want to be turned on by men. I don't want to be turned on by panties. And they think it's horrible and they hate themselves, but they keep doing it because they enjoy it. And then they say, oh, well, that must be an addiction. I would imagine your relief comes from doing something that you like and feel good about, and you feel relieved to connect with that part of you. So no, I do not believe on any planet that engaging in a behavior that turns you on is necessarily an addiction if you don't like it. And we know that fetishes, that you can turn down the volume, son, but they don't go away. Orientation doesn't change. You are who you are. So if I were you, I would be looking at how can I integrate this into my life in a healthy way. So for example, is there addictive behavior here? This is a quiz, okay? I like cross-dressing, and so I go to sex workers every 3 weeks to have that experiences, and I look at cross-dressing porn 3 times a week, and I'm also, that is the problem, is not the cross-dressing. The problem is I'm seeing sex workers. The problem is I'm using porn for 5 hours a day, and I'm lying to my spouse. That's the problem. But the fact that I'm interested in this or that, one of the ways that I look at this, and Tammy's heard me teach this, is that if you're an alcoholic, I don't determine that you're an alcoholic by how often you drink. And I don't determine it by what you drink. You're an alcoholic whether you drink whiskey or wine. You're an alcoholic whether you drink heavily every night or you binge on weekends. So it's the same with us. I'm a sex addict whether I'm into this or I'm into that. That is separate from the fact that I'm an addict. Now, I may act out that behavior in my addiction. I might be so ashamed of it and I don't want my spouse to know or whatever that I go off and do it in secret. But the problem is doing it in secret, not the fact that I have this arousal. In other words, can you live a life of integrity, honesty, and incorporate what arouses you without lying to people, without manipulating, and without hating yourself? By the way, you can't hate yourself into change. And dogs don't change their spots. This is part of who you are. How you choose to manage it and integrate it is what this is about. For example, could you get your spouse to do this with you? Could the two of you enjoy it together? I know groups where couples go and they, let's say the man, I've been to groups where all the women, it's married people, heterosexual people, and all the women stand outside a circle and all the men are putting on makeup and hairdressing, and then the women come in and help them. I have seen that where the person is saying, this is not as important to me as loving you, and we can integrate this in our sex life. And it's not my thing, but I've seen people in that place, and those people tend to do pretty well. And then I've seen people where their spouse hates them or they hate themselves or they see this as an addiction. They don't do so well. And they certainly don't stay sober because self-hatred and shame is a recipe to acting out. You have to come to peace with this, and it's not going to go away. So.
The only thing that was really helpful. The one thing thought when you were talking about turning down the volume is I am making connections from my childhood. So for a lot of people, there is something, some pain, some trauma, some abuse, abandonment, something, where that is painful in childhood. And so attending to that, as an adult may help you turn down the volume on it, but, maybe not, I don't know, but you don't share what it is and I don't need to know, but if you're aware of it, getting help to support through, if there's some trauma or pain or abandonment, I think that could be useful. It's always useful
Well,
to work on those
and
pains.
to put this in context, there are some people who like to be hit during sex. Some people like to be tied up. Some people like to be spanked. And I don't have any judgment on that. You can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting someone. But I might work with that person and understand that as they were coming into their sexuality, they were also being spanked and they got aroused while that was happening, and they sort of tied together sex and pain. They will always tie together sex and pain, but by working through the trauma, as Tammy said, maybe they hate themselves less. Maybe they don't think I'm a bad person, but I understand where this came from. And so I'm not as angry. And, or maybe now I understand, I feel less driven by it. I can make a choice. It's always worthwhile to look at the past and see if you can make peace with it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to change. We don't have wands. We just do therapy.
Okay, next question. Porn addiction is a process addiction rather than a substance addiction. Can you explain why the process addiction is so challenging to stay in reality of their addiction rather than wavering back and forth in denial?
Well, I wouldn't quite agree with that. So let me explain. A process addiction is an addiction to a behavior. So it could be gambling, it could be gaming, it could be sex, it could be shopping and spending. And so process addiction simply means that you're addicted to the process. So if I have a shopping addiction or a spending addiction, I'm addicted the whole thing, taking the money out of the bank, finding out where I'm going to spend it, getting the gift that I can't afford, bringing it home or whatever I do. That whole process is exciting and arousing to me. People who have process addictions, uh, they don't have as hard a time stopping like gambling or gaming because it's exactly the same as drugs and alcohol. You can live a perfectly happy life and never gamble again. You can live a perfectly happy life and play no more video games. However, you cannot live a healthy life without eating. And you can't live a healthy life without sex on some level. So when you have naturally occurring processes like eating and sex that run off the rails, then they become addictions. It's much harder. You have to understand, if I had a gambling addiction, I don't, I'm not near a casino. I don't go on. I don't even know how to have a stock account, or so it's very hard for me to. It takes work for me to access my addiction, and it's not a natural part of my everyday life. But eating, every time someone with an eating disorder sits down at that table, they have to think, there's dessert coming. I want to go in the fridge later and have 3 more pieces, but I'll just show people I have 1 piece. But then later, it's constantly churning. So it's the same with sex. There is healthy sexuality where we look over and say to someone, "Oh, they're attractive," and then we move on. But then there are those of us with the addiction who start staring and following and doing all of that. So when it is something that is healthy to do, like eating and sex, and we run off the rails with it, it's much harder to not do the bad parts because it doesn't leave our life. You still have to eat. You still see all those signs about sex and billboards and TV shows. And it's more deciding what is healthy and what isn't, as opposed to stopping. And every time I go eat, every time I feel sexual or want to be, I have to ask, is this going in the right direction or the wrong direction? That's very different than I know not to gamble. I know not to drink and use. I mean, that's much more black and white. So it's easier to say no. I actually have heard many addicts say, no offense to you, Tammy, that healing from sex addiction is much harder than drugs and alcohol for this
Oh,
reason,
absolutely. Yeah.
that I can put it off and say no
Yeah.
drugs and drinking, but sex. So go ahead, Tammy, you're going to say something.
No, I've owned this before. I have an eating disorder, that's where I really resonate with this because I mean, that was such I mean, I have to be careful about, I don't go on any diets and all of this. I can't because it gets me in a terrible headspace. So I've been in recovery from an eating disorder for a long time, but it was a really challenging thing for me. So, but I'm thinking, okay, so like with porn addiction, to me, porn addiction is almost more like gaming. I mean, you don't have to. So to me, that's a choice, like gaming. Like if you just don't,
Right.
get
You can live a
online
happy
and do
life
all
without porn.
right, right. So yeah, so a little more challenging. I mean, food and sex, I absolutely, I
But
think food is the hardest one because, you absolutely need to eat every day, so, but
well, that's true. And we crave food in a different way than we crave sex. Um, yeah. And so the
okay.
answer is because when you're doing something every day and it's both healthy and or can be unhealthy, it's harder.
Yes. Mm-mm. But porn addiction, like I said, I'd throw that in the gaming category. You don't have to do that one. So,
You can
but
enjoy a healthy life without porn. Yes, that's true.
okay. So, what's the difference between chronic infidelity and sex addiction? My husband took an online test that says he isn't a sex addict, but I just discovered he cheated on me physically multiple times while he was dating. And after we got married, he had approximately 10 sexting relationships.
Well, I bet there were 20. I never
Yeah.
believed 10.
I was
I
gonna say, I bet he's
bet there
underreporting on
was
the online
a lot more
assessment. So
cheating. So it's interesting to me who took the test. Oh, he did. How interesting. And do you think he's being completely honest with you himself or no? So we do testing for sexual arousal and sexual compulsivity at Seeking Integrity. Everybody who comes in has to take it. I have a client who left recently. It was all zeros. Their entire form was zeros. And I thought, nobody has zeros. Even regular people who aren't addicts have zeros. He was lying on the test. What a surprise. So I could take a test and tell you that it says whatever I want it to say, or create and answer the test in a way that I want you to see. That doesn't mean that it's not true. So people lie. Now, if I were a partner and I had been cheated on multiple times before I even got married, and then I got married and there's all this fooling around going on, and I doubt that it's just sexting personally. So I think you have a whopper of a problem on your hands. And to me, it's more of a problem because he isn't like, yeah, I did that. And what was I thinking? And he's saying it isn't a big deal. And by the way, while there might be a difference for me as someone who acts out sexually between chronic infidelity and sex addiction, it doesn't matter for you. I am cheating and I am hurting you and I'm letting you down and I'm violating our relationship. And, for you, the consequences are pretty much the same. So I think that's not the right question. The question is, how do I deal with all this infidelity? And are you going to keep hurting me and cheating on me? And what are you going to do to change that? Because just saying you're not going to do it does not work for me. So I don't care what you call it. What are you guys going to do about it?
that's what I was thinking too. The label, like, it just sounds nicer to call yourself a cheater. We actually have a group starting, a work group out of the doghouse. I don't know this, but I suspect that there's going to be a number of guys who sign up for that particular course, and over the course of the 6 weeks are going to go, oh wait, this is more than I thought, and I actually do fall into the category of sex addiction. So, but there's a lot of people who don't like the label and they feel like it's a horrible thing. And to me, the label was so freeing that there was a reason why I was doing these crazy things that made no
Right.
sense. So it was terribly helpful to have there be, oh, there's not only a label, there's a reason, and there's help, so but at the very least, he's incredibly emotionally immature that he could continually do that to you and not care about the consequences. So that would be the very least, that he's terribly emotionally immature, relationally immature.
And not trustworthy. I
Hmm.
mean, if it were me and I were you, I wouldn't be having sex with this person. Some of you ask why, and my answer is always, why would you have sex with someone you don't trust? Probably wouldn't do that in the world, so why would you do that at home? Um, the other thing is that what Tammy said about Out of the Doghouse, my most popular book of the 10 I have written is Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. It's not just for male sex addicts, it's for men who've been cheating and their wife or girlfriend has found out, and they don't understand the depth or the gravity of the harm that they've caused in their relationship. And by the way, I have to laugh, and excuse me for laughing, but is this a husband? Your husband thinks that there's a difference between how you're going to react between chronic infidelity and sex addiction. As Tammy said, who cares what they call it? Some people call it compulsive sexual behavior. Some people call it addictive. Some people call it all kinds of things. Smells like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's probably a duck. Sorry about that.
No,
Not
I hope
you.
you,
I'm sorry for them.
I know. I agree. And I hope that you are setting healthy boundaries for you. What do you need to do to take care of you? So, and get an STD test. Okay.
Oh, one more thing about
Yeah.
that. I wouldn't listen to him when he says, "Oh, I don't want you looking at my phone," or "I don't want you doing." He has broken trust. If he wants to regain trust, then you have the right to say, "Well, if you want to regain my trust, I want to see what's on your phone. If you want to regain my trust, let's look at your social media." All bets are off on that's private when I have broken the vows of my commitment. Then if I want you to come back, if I want us to work it out, then all bets are off. I don't get to, you are now in charge of what you see and what you want to look at it. I worry a little bit about you drawing conclusions from that, but you get to look at whatever you want.
I'm just putting a link to everyone in the chat for resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com on this one. Under the resources, there's software products that can help track. That may be a useful thing too. So, okay, next question. Do you have any recommendations for sex addiction recovery with co-addiction, like an eating disorder? Yes, we've had clients at our treatment center with that. As I work on one, the other seems to get worse, and vice versa. I'm in therapy for over a year, multiple sessions a week. I go to 12 steps, 3 to 7 meetings a week. I have a chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. My mother was narcissistic personality disorder, and also expresses OCD and anxiety too.
Well, I want to say something that's not polite because I'm a silly joker and you know that. So let me not do that. Let me just say that I wouldn't be surprised if you also have mental health issues. I'm a sex addict, but my mother was bipolar. And so I have depression, I have anxiety, I have genetic traces of the same issues. And when I hear about multiple addictions and I hear about a therapy for a year, a good stab at it. And when I hear about a lot of 12-step meetings and I hear about a mentally ill mother, I think, have you been to see a psychiatrist? Are you aware? Because if you're working as hard as you can and you're really committed, something's not right. If you're lying to yourself, lying to others, if you're committed to this and committed to change, or if you're not, only you can answer that question. And if you are, and you're not lying to yourself and you've done everything you can, then I would say there's probably some other outside issues going on. My experience is that eating disorders and sexual disorders are often come about because you have really early trauma. We have really early abuse because if you think about it, our most basic functions are sensuality, mom's holding us, and feeding. So if in our earliest stages of life we've had some challenges with those issues, we're going to be challenged by that later on in life. So what I would say is your issues are probably pretty early in life. And there may be a genetic component. I would not be surprised. And I absolutely would be seeing a psychiatrist. By the way, my recovery, I was able to get sober without medication, but I was never able to be happy. I was never able to be at peace. The worrying, the anxiety, the depression. I had thought, well, once I get this addiction in order, then I'm going to feel better. And the truth is, I felt better, but the other issues didn't go away, and I needed to address them. So to me, this feels like there's more than one issue, but that's just me.
And I really do want to honor. You are working hard. This is not the person who's going to the 15-minute session once a week and hoping
Right.
life will get different. So I honor you for being here. And when you're talking about your mom, I was like, oh, that's for her own challenges, is a mom that can't step up and be loving and nurturing to to a child. That's unfortunately, on the podcast Sex, Love, and Addiction, Dr. Rob did one with Dr. Enid Gray on neglect, the silent abuser. There's a book as well about that, and it talks about, and it isn't Child Protective Services neglect. It's about the neglect that the parents, for whatever reasons, don't have the bandwidth. There's a whole bunch of kids, or has to work a lot, or narcissistic personality disorder, or other mental health issues. So there's reasons why kids learn at a young age that I can't have needs. I need to take care of myself. I need to dissociate and handle my life on my own. So glad you're here. I explore some of the options that Dr. Rob suggested.
And by the way, if you're looking for a therapist or a professional, Tammy and I, well, we used to train them for many years. And also, I think there probably isn't a better couple, although we're in different states and we're not involved, but that knows there aren't two people who know probably more about good referrals around these issues in the country than we do. I can really say that. And so when we refer, it's not because we're getting kickbacks or because we like somebody. We refer to people that we really believe are well trained. And so if you want to reach out to Tammy at Seeking Integrity, as Tammy would say, it's a 4-letter word, TAMI. We have really good referrals for therapists and psychiatrists and all that kind of stuff. So you can
let me know
out
where you're located, though, too, because that's important that I know where you're located. So, okay, next question.
One more thing about that. Sorry. But you don't have to be in Austin. You don't have to be in New York, because your therapist just has to be in that state.
Correct.
So because
state
we're
licensure.
Doing so much online, it's like if my therapist is in Houston, but I'm in Austin, that's perfectly fine because we're in the same state. Go ahead, Tammy.
Okay, next question. I would love to hear any thoughts on how long it takes your eyes to recover from a porn addiction. I'm in recovery for a year, but I find it hard to control my eyes in public. I still tend to notice size and shapes of attractive women and would like not to.
Well, this is kind of like the question on cross-dressing, or I say this, Tammy, I have to say, people in hell want ice water. Just because you don't want to look at people, it's a naturally occurring process. Every human being who is an adult, who is healthy enough, has sexual feelings, and we look at people and say, oh, aren't they attractive? Oh, look at that. This is part of life. I know that our spouses would prefer that we never look at anyone again and never be attracted to anyone and never, but that's not realistic. The question I would say is, so your eyes, there's nothing wrong with your eyes. It's a problem in your brain. And, the question is, what is the line between healthy and unhealthy? We have something called in our field called the 3-second rule. And it's for staring. And what it literally means is I look for a moment, sorry, spouses, and I say, oh, that person's attractive because that's human and that's real. And the second, and I mean seconds, I look away because that's the next thing I need to do. And then the third thing I do is think, that's someone's wife, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's child. I really wish them well in life. In other words, you see them as a human being. So I look away, and I think well for them. And then I don't look back. So sometimes I find absolutely for addicts, it's easier to have something to do rather than something to not do. So to say, I'm not going to look, that ain't going to happen. To say, I'm going to look, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to keep walking is very possible. So when you talk about recovery, first of all, if you're a man, men are very visual. That's why men are so into porn and strip clubs, and we want to see. And we like new stimulation. So that's why porn works so well for us, because it's visual and it's constantly changing. So I can imagine that it's not your eyes, but it's easy to distract yourself by looking here and looking there. I would ask myself, how am I looking? Am I staring? Am I following? Or do I look and then move on? Because the idea that, I tend to notice the size and shapes of attractive women and would like not to. Well, I have to tell you, I don't know a heterosexual man on the planet who doesn't tend to notice the size and shapes of attractive women. But I don't think most of them say I wouldn't like to. I think they might say something like, I don't want my wife to see, or I'd rather, but the reality is we're going to look because that's what we do. How do we be respectful of that person and respectful of our relationship, knowing that we are probably going to look? That's really the answer. And by the way, when your spouse says, I think I saw you looking at that person, don't lie. Say, yeah, I was looking, they're very attractive. And well, isn't that a problem with your recovery? No, but if it was, I would tell you. That's where it begins and ends.
So two
Tammy,
things on that. I've heard the 3-second rule hijacked, that I get to look for 3 seconds. No.
it's a waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, exactly. And when you're looking at size and shapes, like that really, to me, I hear objectification because I'm looking at body parts and seeing, particular things. So really quickly moving to the, humanizing, and not that they're just body parts, I think will be very useful for you. The other thing is, if you're going out in public, you know, do you need to call your sponsor before you go, and call your sponsor when you get back? Do you need to have accountability? Do you need to do some grounding or mindfulness before you go so that you have a plan? Can you do some things that will set yourself up before you exit into public that will help give you more tools and more skills to be able to manage that? But I 100% agree with Dr. Rob. It isn't about not doing it. It's about having a plan, knowing this is going to happen. So what is my plan? So you're prepared.
I also want to add to that. I'm in recovery for a year. I so hate to tell you this, but that's really early. And if after a year you're not having sex with strangers, you're not compulsively masturbating to porn, you're not, and I hate to say this, spouses, but all you're doing is looking at people, I would consider that to be a lot of success. And moving to the more subtle things, like not to lose myself in fantasy, or not to look, that's not like you're not having sex with those people. You are going through a little bit of fantasy and distraction. That's a whole long way from probably what you used to do. So I would give yourself a lot of credit for what you've achieved in a year. And these more subtle, longer term things, you're going to have to work on over time. They're not going to change. You can stop acting out. That's a do or a don't. But being in the world and seeing people are attractive, that's just being alive. So we could do one more, Tammy, right?
Okay. Yes, I was just going to ask you. So, if sex addiction involves a deceptive integrity disorder as part of the behaviors, how does an SA all of a sudden make a decision that requires integrity in seeking professional help together?
Well, I don't think that SA, being an addict of any kind, involves a deceptive integrity disorder. First of all, that doesn't exist. So that's a made up thing. But all addicts are deceptive in order to cover up what they do and continue doing it. We lie. We have no integrity. There's a reason why we named our treatment program Seeking Integrity, because when you're an addict, you're not integrated. There's a part of you doing something over here and not telling those people. There's a part of you over here. So, recovery is about integration. It's about taking these lying, cheat, all these parts of you and putting them together. So, yes, being deceptive and suffering from a lack of integrity is what all addicts do in order to maintain their addiction. I do not think that we make any sudden decisions to move toward integrity. I think that the integrity comes out of a lot of little things that we do. I'm going to meetings. I'm talking to a sponsor. I've been reading this book. I am making myself accountable when I go out, as Tammy said. These pieces lead to integrity. Integrity doesn't just happen. Integrity is a series of behaviors and words and activities. It's living life in a different way. A lot of people come to treatment and they say, okay, what I'm here for is to stop acting out. What they don't realize is it's about, really, recovery is about, how do I live a different life? How can I learn to be in the world in a different way? I'll give you a perfect example of this. Another client that we had at Seeking Integrity, I caught him. I literally caught him. We were almost getting ready for him to leave. And I thought, I wonder how much he works. So I said to him a couple of days before he left, how many hours a week do you work? And he said 75. And I thought, okay, so this is a decision that's going to involve integrity, which means he's going to have to work 45. And that is how he's going to have time to focus on his family, his kids, and his recovery. So it wasn't a decision he made all at once. He started working on the addictions, he came to treatment, and then he came to realize that his work habits were not supporting his recovery. When he made the decision to change his work times, he moved closer to integrity. But it isn't an all at once. It's a step by step by step by step process. We're really become more reliable, more available, more empathic. You could say to me, if someone's been a jerk while they were acting out, how long does it take for them to not be a jerk? And it's like, that might be a while. They can stop acting out sexually, but being a good person who's kind and caring, that can take longer. So I'm not sure if I answered all that, Tammy. Do you have any other thoughts?
I think you did a great job, and we're out of time, and it's time to
Okay.
get dinner. So don't
Well,
you think?
folks, don't forget that there's tons of free stuff, free meetings and free groups and all that. I have a podcast that has almost 1 million downloads. There's lots of ways. YouTube, apparently our YouTube channel is really busy. So
Mhm.
what we are offering is answers all the time. Answers, answers, answers. I hope you seek them out, and I hope that we're able to help. This is just one format that we use. Thank you, Tammy. You have a
Thank
good
you,
evening.
Dr. Rob. Yes, welcome to 2022, and we'll be here throughout the year, and lots of resources. I mentioned there's work groups starting this week on seekingintegrity.com, and the schedule is fuller again because we had some gaps on sex and relationship healing.com during the holidays, but it's back to full. So check out the resources. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Bye.
evening. Bye, guys.